Good evening, Council Rock. Thank you to those who are here tonight and those joining on YouTube for tonight's review of the preliminary 2024-2025 budget. The work you're about to see represents a diligent, responsible, and careful analysis of the fiscal considerations for the 2024-2025 school year. Without a doubt, this information is complex, but we hope to provide you with an understanding of how Council Rock plans to continue bringing exceptional academics and whole child support to each and every one of our students. The information presented tonight is preliminary. Please note the budget has not yet been finalized. Once again, the information tonight is preliminary and the budget has not yet been finalized. Your questions about the budget process are important, and accuracy in answering them is essential. We ask that you contact the Council Rock Business Office directly with any questions and not rely on social media sites as they often misrepresent or skew information. Remember, Council Rock is the most reliable and accurate source of all information regarding the district. Thank you again for joining us, and now it is my pleasure to introduce to you our Director of Business Administration, Mr. Tony Rapp. Tony?
Thank you, Dr. Senko. Tonight we're going to start with a review of the budget as it stands. So the agenda for tonight, proposed general budget, review of budget details, revenue details, expenditure details, the full budget, and then we'll talk about the tax rebate, and then we'll have a time for questions and answers from the audience. The 24-25 budget includes the following items. A school resource officer in each middle school, which is split between Council Rock School District and the police departments that are supplying the officers. Maintains the same rates for health insurance in 24-25 that were being paid by the district as a whole. That's both the employees and the district in 24-25. We will not be increasing those rates. Converts the technology integration specialists who were on a grant program into regular positions. Those are very valuable positions that we feel need to continue to work for the district, and so we've made them permanent positions. It uses the 23-24 amounts for state funding. We cannot look at the 24-25 amounts that are in the state budget as it sits because that hasn't been passed yet and won't be passed till after our budget is passed. It includes a reserve of $500,000. We have had reserve in the past years, usually anywhere from $500,000 to $1.5 million. We are putting that back in the budget this year. We did not have it last year because there was some issue with the original deficit as we were putting the budget together, but we did add that back this year. It does include a $72,180 in a grant from the state for English language development for Ukrainian students. We spent about $20,000 of that grant, so far $23,000, and we will be spending the rest in 24-25, usually by the first half of the year. And it begins the process of funding district-wide initiatives through the central office budget. In the past, when there were things that went that were district-wide and maybe some workbooks or a new part of the work on a new textbook, we would take that out of each school's budget, which is based on an amount divided by the number of students in that school. We're in the process of removing those types of things from the school budget so the school budgets can remain pretty even from year to year, and none of the schools are looking for money that they had last year but did not have this year because of a district-wide initiative. So one of the things that we looked at is our staffing, where we could improve, especially educationally. And if you look at this slide, you can see that We would like to add a supervisor of curriculum and instruction. For special education, we have one for regular education. We'd like to add one for special education. 2 more English language development specialists. A STEAM teacher, going back to English language development, I'm sorry. We've had a significant increase in the number of students who do not speak English as a first language, and in order to provide them the services that they need, we would like to add 2 English language development specialists. A STEAM teacher, our STEAM program has been expanding, and we'd like to, we need to add a teacher to help with that. A math specialist. We have, with the addition of this math specialist, we will have a math specialist at every elementary school. So that will give us enough math specialists to have one at every elementary school. A data analyst, so we can look at the data that we get from different sources and parse it. Have somebody dedicated full-time to parsing that data and providing us with the resources that we need from that data, and what we need, how we can use that data. And last, budgeted position, there's an endpoint technician, which is an additional IT staff to help out. There's a significant number of calls, requests for help in the IT department to help make those requests, get those requests fulfilled in a timely manner. And then the addition of 2 middle school hall monitors. We don't have, we would like to add some hall monitors in the middle school, benefit students as far as, helping them get around, know what they're doing, where they're going in the middle school, and keep things safe in the middle schools. As you can see, I'm sorry, I did miss one. There is the human resources supervisor. We have, our staff is growing. We have a lot of need for work in the human resources department, and we'd like to add this position to assist the director and staff with getting everything done that needs to be done in a timely manner. As the district expands, as our teachers expand, I think that's a good addition for helping us keep up with that. And as you can see, every one of these positions, even the human resources supervisor is going to touch kids and students in some way, going to reach students in some way. So this is a very kid-centered additional positions. Another thing I'd like to add is that these additional budgeted positions, these are budgeted positions. So these are positions that will be coming out of the budget. We'll be using current year resources to pay for these positions. Added to the budget, consider that they would move on to next year's budget as well. In contrast to that, we have 4 educational initiatives positions. We have an educational initiatives fund balance of a little bit under $8 million right now. We would like to establish these positions in the next year to evaluate how effective they are, but not use current resources to pay for them. We would use resources that we already have to pay for these positions in the next year. Next year, maybe the year after that. If after we're done evaluating these positions, they're as effective as we hope they will be, then we will talk about moving them into being a permanent position. One of those positions is 2 teachers on special assignment to help out at the elementary schools. And the other position, 2 assistant athletic directors, 1 for each high school, to assist in the high schools with the athletic programs, and with the assistant principals that are assigned to the athletic programs to help them do everything that they need to do. So going through, again, we are recommending a 2.64% real estate tax increase. And you can see that that's broken up into the additional budgeted positions that I spoke about 2 slides ago. The deficit reduction to keep the pay for amounts that were keep our expenses are expanding. Inflation is growing, so we're going to asking to increase taxes to pay for the difference between what a contract for, say, transportation cost last year versus what it's going to cost in the next year. Same thing with like the cleaning contract, and obviously employee salaries increase due to contracts. So we're asking to increase that to help pay for that. We've talked about the full-day kindergarten increase, where we're increasing we're phasing in a tax increase to pay for full-day kindergarten ongoing expenses over 2 years, rather than having that increase occur in 1 year. So in order to break up the effect that's going to have on the taxpayers, we're trying to do that over 2 years to minimize it in 1 year, and we don't know what next year is going to bring. So with the Act 1 index, if it decreases like it's supposed to, there might not be enough room for a tax increase that would cover that. And then the last one is debt service. We've talked about the fact that we have buildings that need to be updated. We have some opportunities in the district that we want to that are going to require a building additional building renovations. So we are looking at our current amount of debt service, amount that we tax for debt service. We're at the point where we need to add more to that in order to borrow more money in the future to pay for different construction projects that we're going to have. I would like to point out that this is not the same amounts that were in the last presentation that I did. In putting the budget into the state system, they have you calculate tax increases a little bit differently than we had been doing. So there is an additional amount that is part of this tax increase. So if you look at the total amount ends up being a little bit higher, and the percent increases, but part of the difference is the additional budgeted positions were going to be a 0.55% tax increase, or 0.57 tax increase. Now they're a 0.55 tax increase, and the same with the full-day kindergarten was going to be another 0.57 tax increase, and it's actually going to be a 0.56 tax increase because those amounts stayed the same. The deficit reduction amount did go up, but we do want to keep what we have for debt service, but the percent that we need for deficit reduction or for full-day kindergarten and the additional positions did decrease slightly. So it's only it's not a significant difference when you look at the total taxes, but it was just when you take out the homestead amounts by the state versus when we did it. And it has to do with the fact that we don't get the homestead amount till well after our taxes have been calculated. So, and it remains the same. A home with an assessed value of $45,967, which is the average assessed value in the district, would pay an additional $166 under this tax increase. And the use of the Educational Initiatives Fund balance that I talked about for those other 4 positions that we're trying to see how they fare next year, and would be $385,210. And that's obviously not part of a tax increase because that's using prior year resources to pay for those. Just real quick, there's a lot of information on here, but this is just showing you the different revenues, local revenues that we have. You can see that the final budget for the current real estate tax for 24-25, we're recommending to be $173,527,000, which is $5,458,521 more than last year, and that's a 3.25% increase. I realize I said the tax increase would be 2.68 or 64, but the difference is the our assessed values have gone up, so that's why that percentage is higher than what the tax increase is. So taxes, real estate taxes would increase by 3.25% overall, but there are more, the assessed values are higher, there's more properties are being assessed at higher values due to construction that make up that difference. There was about a $9 million increase in assessed value throughout the district. You can see the rest of the taxes. These are all the local taxes, the real estate taxes, the local services tax, the earned income tax, and you can see these taxes are pretty much level or near level until you get down to the earned income tax, which we've seen about a $1 million increase in that from year to year. So we feel comfortable budgeting that at $1 million increase. And the biggest non-tax increase is in local revenue is the earnings on investments. We've been doing very well with our investment earnings. So we're projecting an additional $2.5 million in earnings over last year's budget. Or by last year, I mean 23-24, the year that we're in. Page 2 of the local revenue budget. These are much more minor revenues, the facility rentals, tuition, which we will not have any tuition from patrons revenue next year. There was one student that we were giving services to in our schools that another school district was paying us for. That student is graduating and will be moving on, so we won't be getting that revenue anymore. The rest of it, again, it's pretty flat, but the total increase in revenue is $9.498 million, or an increase of 4.62%. The state revenue budget is pretty much what we are receiving this year in 23-24. As I said, I don't know what the final numbers are going to be from the state when that budget is passed. Right now, we are not projected to get much of an increase in areas like basic education or special education, at least not compared to what we've gotten in years past. So we every year we pretty much use what we are just going to receive in the prior year. So you can see that those increases are basically the increases that from 22-23 from last year's budget to what we actually received. Sorry. So in 23-24, we're going to get $1 million more in basic education than we got in 22-23, so that's the budget increase, or that we budgeted in 22-23. Rental reimbursement is pretty much the only one that is an accurate number in the state, because we know that's based on the amount of bonds that we have and what money we receive from the state to help us pay for those bonds. And we do have some debt retiring, so that $397,000 is decreasing. Is a decrease because of the debt retiring that had reimbursement revenue that we were receiving. The state property reduction funds, that is something that was a significant increase, and again, that's another number that's pretty accurate because we get that from the state. It was increase of $1.45 million, but that's not really revenue to the district. That's just a reduction. That's revenue to the taxpayers because we're able to use that to reduce the real estate tax, to reduce their real estate tax. So even though we get that money, we subtract that from the real estate revenue budget, and that's included in the $173 million that I showed you 2 slides ago. So that $8,045,000 is state money, but it does get divided up and given back to the taxpayers as a break on their real estate tax bills. State retirement reimbursement and Social Security reimbursement, we calculate those based on our salaries. Like an average, it's supposed to be 50% of what we pay for Social Security and retirement. It's actually a little bit less, so we look at what that percentage has been that we've received over the last 5 years and use that number to calculate that. And as our salaries are increasing, those both increase by 8.32% and 5.02%. And total state revenue increase of $3.6 million, or 6.29%. Our federal revenue is pretty much flat. We just take last year's numbers. The only difference is we have $1 million in ESSER funding. Our ESSER funding ran out in 23-24 as it was supposed to. We spent that where it needed to be spent, but we don't have that grant anymore, so we don't have that funding. So that's a difference of $1 million that was budgeted last year. The total revenue budget is $277,641,099. That's an increase of $12,096,788, or 4.56% over last year. Expenditure budget, this is broken up by types of the type of expenditure it is. So we have the personnel services salaries, which is increasing because of the addition of the employees, as well as the addition of the increased rates because of the contracts. Employee benefits, although we're not increasing health care, things like Social Security expense, retirement expense are included under employee benefits. So as those increase with our salaries, as our salaries increase, those amounts will increase. So that's why employee benefits is increasing. Purchase services, those are third parties that we bring in to help with education. That's a lot of that is, you know, contracted. Property services is going up about $979,000. That's additional things like snow plowing and different property services that we have. And the big one you can see is other purchase services. That's where our contract for transportation lies. That's where our contract for housekeeping lies. So in those two areas, they're the biggest increases in those as we have the contracted rate increases. We do have the ABM contract and the Durham contract, which we were able to reduce from a 4.5% increase in 23-24 and 24-25 through the entire contract to 4% each year. So we did manage to save some money over what we thought we had to spend. The other purchase services, property expenses, that's you know, upkeep of the buildings. Other objects is just some things that, you know, that don't fit into any of these little categories. The transfer to debt service did increase because of the increase in the debt service tax increase that we're recommending. And budgetary reserve, as I said before, wasn't there last year, so that's an overall increase of $500,000. That leaves us with an increase of $11,340,063 for a 4.38% increase overall. So the budget summary, looking at revenues and expenditures, we're looking at $277 million in revenues, $279 million in expenditures, with a deficit of $1.7 million. That deficit is less than 9 of the last 10 years budgeted deficits. So we're not budgeting anything. That deficit may look large, but it's around the same or lower than the deficits that we've been budgeting. So that's all I have on the budget, but I do want to talk about the tax rebate because that goes hand in hand with the budget, especially when we talk about the tax increase. There was a 24-25 tax rebate program. We did institute this in 23-24. It's been you know, successful. in the number of people that have requested refunds is around 80, I believe, and we've given out about 20,000 refunds. It's not as successful as we had hoped it would be, in that we budgeted 250,000 for that. But we are asking to expand that in the upcoming year. Part of that is natural because of the PA program is expanding, and we're going to expand along with it. The PA property tax maximum rebates increasing from $650 to $1,000 for the highest or the lowest income earners that pay real estate taxes. There's also an additional rebate that if you pay a certain amount of taxes of your income, if a certain amount of your income, a high amount of your income goes towards your real estate taxes, you get an additional rebate that's 1/2 of your original rebate. So that rebate's increasing from $325 to $500, which again is 1/2 of 1,000. It also includes rebate increases for all qualifying income levels, not just the lowest tier. So a resident with income of $35,000 in 23-24 through the state was entitled to a rebate of $250. That same resident in the state rebate would qualify for a $380 rebate. And in 23-24, that was the highest level of rebate that you could get, was at $35,000 income. They've also expanded the maximum income to qualify now. It's, instead of being $35,000, it's $45,000. So the amount that that will increase the number of taxpayers that will qualify for that rebate. And so what we're recommending is to follow the same rules again as the state rebate as we did last year. But then additionally, we were rebating in 23-24 at 75% of the state rebate. We're looking to increase that to 100% of the state rebate. So we're asking to match every dollar that they get rebated from the state. The district will match it. It's in conjunction with the state increase. If we looked at just the people who got a rebate this year, it would increase it from $25,912.50 to $52,900, which is a difference of $26,987. Still well below the budget amount of $250,000 where we were where we budgeted last year, and we have the same amount in the budget this year. So even if everybody who would have qualified for a rebate would file next year, we'd still only spend $52,900. However, we do have to consider the fact that there will be some additional people between over $35,000 up to $45,000 who did not get a rebate last year that'll get a rebate this year in 24-25. But keep in mind, those are the people that receive the lowest rebate, so there wouldn't be a huge increase in that amount. If you look at some of those rebated amounts, there's a couple of them that I've looked at with the increase in the rebate and the difference between the increase in their rebate through Council Rock and what they would pay in additional taxes by the tax increase. They would actually end up paying less in taxes overall once they got their rebate back. So for some taxpayers, our increase in the rebate is more than the increase in taxes. So that's the tax rebate. And so that's the budget that we have set up for next year. If there's anyone who has any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. Yes.
Yes, it's just a reminder that on the tax rebate, when you're talking about income to a Social Security recipient, that $45,000 income only has to include half of their Social Security income. Just a reminder. So.
Yes, thank you for that. You're completely right.
Hi. First, I just want to say thanks for doing this because it's extremely enlightening and helpful, so I really appreciate it. Um, Can you, this may be just because I have not seen this kind of detail before, can you explain for someone like me who doesn't know much about this? Is this okay? Yeah. Why, so why do we carry a deficit at all instead of balancing it? And then how does that relate to, how does that relate to the educational initiative? Like if we have funds somewhere, why are we carrying a deficit? I guess that's my question.
That's a good question. Thank you. The reason that we carry a deficit is because we do a conservative budget, and I did not talk about that, but our budgets are always very conservative. So we budget maximum expenditures, and we budget minimum revenue increases, especially things like in the state where we don't know what it's going to be. So when we do the budgeting, we don't. We look at the past, and we usually do better than the budget because of how conservative we are, which we need to be because, you know, we don't want to be in a position where we don't budget conservatively and then all of a sudden we end up way behind our budget. And so we budget with a deficit, but we expect to do better than that. We do have fund balance from years past increases. So fund balance is the amount of money in each fund. In our general fund, this is the general fund budget. So our general fund has more funds available from prior years where we had more revenue than we had expenditures. And we usually either put that away for balancing the budget. I mean, the assumption is when you have a budget deficit that you're going to use fund balance to cover that. So for prior years' returns. So we either keep that in the general fund. We've moved it into the debt service fund in the past, but the biggest use of it has been to move it over to the capital reserve fund for future capital reserve summer projects. So we want to make sure that we have funds available for that. But the idea of a budget deficit is that should the budget be 100% right, we know that we have we have prior year fund balance that's available to cover that difference. And then as part of that fund balance, we have that $8 million, a little less than $8 million of educational initiatives. That money's been put away for when the district wants to try a new program. We have money set aside to institute that program. The thing about it is you don't want to. You have to remember when you're doing a budget that every year, every time you add something to the budget, it's an ongoing thing. So you don't want to put in the educational initiatives budget fund balance. You don't want to use something unless you plan on using it for a year or two and then putting it in the budget. You don't want to use that for something that's going to be ongoing forever. So that's why we have that, and that is additional fund balance that's been put away for expanding our educational initiatives. So when we have a new initiative, like full-day kindergarten, like these programs there are some costs that we've talked about in full-day kindergarten, where we're adding equipment and furniture. We're going to use educational initiatives fund balance for that because that's a one-year thing. We're not going to use it for teachers because that's ongoing. Now, in the case of the 4 positions that I spoke about, the two athletic assistant athletic directors and the 2 teachers on special assignment, those positions, we're using the educational initiatives to pay that staff, but we're looking at the effect that they're having to see how effective it is before it becomes permanent. We would not want to do that for maybe more than 2 years. Okay. You're welcome. Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you everyone for coming. Thank you everyone on YouTube watching at home. Please, budget's on the website if you want to look at it. It's under the finance portion of the business department, and with that, we'll say good night. Thank you.